you don't get on the Carson Show, at that time, it was the world's litmus test for being able to call yourself a comedian. So if somebody came up to you in the street, or somebody didn't know, or even your mom was talking to somebody and said, my son's a comedian, my son's an impressionist, my son, the first question anybody inside and outside the business would say, has he been on Johnny?
Yep.
And if you said no, even if you said, I did Mike Douglas, I did Dinah Shore, I did Mercury, you were not considered
a comedian.
You were not, that gave you, so.
And just to get on wasn't enough. You had to do well.
Well, this is what I was going to tell you about the truth. Because I came to it from the outside, first of all, I couldn't get on. The guy that booked it didn't like me, didn't think Johnny would like me, thought I was too silly, thought I didn't do it. The way I got on was through Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was the guest host before she did her own show.
Crazy.
And she saw me at the Comedy Store because she used to come out from New York and work on her monologues at the Comedy Store. She saw me and said, you should do the show. I did the show with her.
Right.
He saw that show and called his booker, and I was on the next week. I ended up doing 22 shows.
It's wild.
With him, and then I did a bunch more. But I will tell you, maybe this is a little bit controversial. As much as everybody holds him in esteem and that show in esteem, and it does change your career, and it does sit heavily in most people's minds as far as whatever the pinnacle to get to as a comedian, I always had a little bit of disdain for it. And my disdain for it was this, that I would see singers come on, and you could see a singer at the Ramada Inn or around a campfire who sings a cover song, nothing they wrote. And then they would sing the song and then sit down and he would talk to them. I would see an actor come on who is reciting, lines that were given to them, and they were not even the star of a show, but I use the example, and I don't know why I'm using this, but Donnie Most, who was an actor on a show called Happy Days, it wasn't the Fonz, and it wasn't Ron Howard, and he'd come on and he'd
get to talk to John.
He would be interviewed. And a comedian who creates his voices
would do their 5 minutes,
but they do their own material. They would create their whole thing. They would need to elicit more from an audience than anybody else. If you sat down and talked as an actor, you didn't have to get laughs. You could just tell stories and sit there for 5 minutes and talk. If you sang somebody else's song or even your own song, you could play and sing a song, and then at the end, just because the applause sign would go up. But a comedian needs to come out, and you need, otherwise it's debilitating. You need to make 500 people go like that. So the work of a comedian is a lot harder and a lot understated. And then you were lucky if he would give you a thumbs up, an okay sign, or wave you over. So, and then you'd hear comedians, and because I didn't come at it from show business, because I was pretty, I was already 23 and I was working and everything, I used to be amazed by other comedians talking about, I got to sit down. I got to sit down my first time. I got the okay sign. And I would go, really? Really? I don't understand, because I came to this by accident, why you guys are so impressed or, begging for this little acknowledgement when people who are really, for all intents and purposes, offering so much less.
These actors, these musicians.
And even by the same token, I once watched Jerry Seinfeld at...
that's such an interesting point, though. What you're saying is like the value of being called over to Carson's couch was diminished because he was interviewing lame TV stars who didn't have to invent.
I won't even use the word lame. I'm just saying...
He was interviewing TV stars who weren't inventing their own material, and here you are crafting your own original 5-minute bit. So what is the value of the signal?
I told this story the other day, but it's not my story. It's a Jerry Seinfeld story. But Jerry was receiving one of the most brilliant things that I connect with Jerry Seinfeld is the fact that he was receiving, I think, an award at the Aspen Comedy Festival. And he said, as a comedian, we're not used to awards. When you think of awards, those are actors. And then think of acting. So what is acting? Acting is somebody picks you up. You don't drive yourself to work. Somebody picks you up. They comb your hair. They put on makeup. Maybe they give you a mask. They put a piece of tape on the floor. They tell you to stand here. And here's what I want you to say. You read the script. You didn't come up with the words. You say that. And then they go, cut. Say it again. Cut. Say it again. Cut. say it again. Go to your trailer, wait. We'll get you in a few hours. We're going to get that from 5 different angles. We're gonna put that together so it seems like you came up with this speech and everything, and you're going to look great. And then we see the Academy Awards where we go, brilliant. You're brilliant. Not only are you brilliant, but how should we vote? How should we vote? Give us your political input. Whereas a comedian who sits down and crafts his own story or her own story, creates their own character, needs to elicit so much from the audience out of nothing, is really lucky if
they get a little
if you're allowed to sit down.
It's such an interesting dynamic. I've never thought about it like this. That is wild. I mean, do you think it was like just a power play thing? Because Carson wasn't really even a comedian, though. So I guess where would that even come from? Because
I think he fancied himself a comedian. He would come to the Comedy Store and work on his act, and he would play
He did.
He did play Vegas a lot.
Well, I mean, early on, because I listened to...
He was a host.
He did his college thesis on how to craft jokes. You can find it online. It's crazy. Here's how to craft a joke. At the University of Nebraska, I think is what it was.
He was a comedian.
But,
he did
I mean,
play.
in terms of the traditional stand-up sense, though.
He was a talk show host that did comedy.
That's what I mean.
And he was also, through my years, hailed as a great proponent.